It was supposed to be a quiet return. A small celebration. I just spent 2 peaceful weeks in a sleepy coastal village in Maine, watching the sea foam crash against the rocks and knitting scarves no one asked for. It was my 69th birthday. I didn't expect balloons or confetti, just the comfort of walking into my house, curling up with a cup of tea, and putting my feet up. Instead, I stepped into a hollow shell of my life. I knew something was wrong the moment I pulled into the driveway. My hydrangeas were gone. Not wilted, gone. Uprooted from the flowerbeds like someone had surgically removed the cheer from the front of my home. The porch light didn't turn on when I stepped closer. And the welcome home doormat, one my late husband had bought for me during a garage sale on our 30th anniversary, was missing. I stared at the bare concrete step for a few seconds longer than necessary, my suitcase handle clenched in my hand. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe someone was house-sitting and decided to tidy up. But then I unlocked the door. It was as if someone had vacuumed out my entire existence. No couch. No paintings. No dining room table. No chairs. No rug. The walls were bare, so bare that my footsteps echoed off them. My stomach twisted, my mouth dried, and my heart beat so hard I could feel it in my throat. Even the fridge had been wheeled out. Cabinets were empty. Closets, gutted. My bedroom looked like no one had ever lived in it. The worst part? There wasn't a single broken lock, a single shattered window, a single forced door. This wasn't a robbery. It was a clearance. The room spun. A sharp pain bloomed behind my eyes. My fingers tingled. I knew this feeling. I'd been warned about it. My blood pressure had always been my silent shadow, but this time, it had claws. I don't remember pressing the emergency dial on my phone. But when I woke up, I was in a hospital gown, hooked to beeping machines, with a nurse checking my pulse and a concerned doctor standing at the foot of the bed. Hypertensive emergency, he explained gently. You're lucky you called when you did. But I hadn't called. I'd reacted. Because what I saw was not just a burglary, it was a betrayal. As soon as I was lucid, I asked for my phone and called the police. The nurse tried to stop me. I waved her away. 2 hours later, I was standing back inside my house, with 2 uniformed officers beside me, trying to process the void. Neighbors were the first mystery to unravel. One by one, they came forward with the same bewildered, repeated line. Your daughter said you were moving into a care facility and told us you gave her permission to take your things. My legs buckled. One of the officers caught my arm. Alyssa. My only daughter. My only child. I called her. The conversation was short. She didn't even sound panicked. Oh, that. Yeah, she said. Patrick needed some capital to start a business. The bank wouldn't approve his loan, so we did what we had to do. We? I asked her if she understood what she had done. If she grasped that she had stolen my entire life. She laughed. It was just stuff, Mom. Mostly junk, honestly. You're always saying how cluttered the house was. And it's not like you need it. You should be living somewhere simpler anyway. Stay in a motel for now. Once Patrick's business takes off, we'll help you out. I didn't say a word. I just hung up. The officer beside me looked at me with cautious empathy. Ma'am, do you want to file charges against your daughter? I looked around at my bare home, the one where I had rocked her to sleep, cooked her birthday dinners, mended her clothes when she was 7 and broke her heart when she was 16. My throat burned. No, I said. Are you sure? I'm sure, I replied. Because I didn't need police charges. I needed revenge. The motel room smelled like bleach and stale cigarettes, even though the sign outside proudly claimed non-smoking rooms available. I didn't complain. I wasn't there to be comfortable. I was there to think. To plot. The bedside lamp buzzed. The walls were so thin I could hear the man next door snoring. I sat on the edge of the springy bed, fingers laced together, and stared at the ceiling, trying to decide what part of me hurt the most, the betrayal, the humiliation, or the fact that I hadn't seen it coming. Alyssa had always been headstrong, but she'd never been cruel. Until Patrick. Patrick Flannery. If arrogance could be bottled and sold, he'd be a billionaire already. Every time he came to dinner, he'd talk over me. Brag about the next big thing he was building. Venture-backed, he once said, pointing to his half-broken smartwatch. It's all about timing, Ashton. And vision. Vision. The only vision I saw was one where he leeches off my daughter until there's nothing left but regret. And now he had leeched off me. I opened my old black leather planner. The one Alyssa hadn't stolen because it was in my purse when she emptied the house. I turned to the back page where I'd once scribbled down the name of a man who helped my neighbor catch her cheating husband 5 years ago. Theo Maddox. Private investigator. The number was still there. I dialed. He picked up on the second ring. This is Maddox. My name is Ashton, I said. My daughter stole everything I own and gave it to her boyfriend to fund his business. I need to know everything about that boyfriend. His business, his finances, where he's keeping my things, and how soon I can ruin him. There was a beat of silence, then, I charge $200 a day plus expenses. That's fine. And I don't do revenge. I collect facts. I smiled into the receiver. You collect them. I'll use them. Within a week, Theo had what I needed. Patrick's business was a startup called Skyverge Mobility, an app that claimed it would revolutionize rideshare logistics. It was built on cheap code stolen from open-source libraries and hosted on a server that barely functioned. He had no licensing, no insurance, and no proper tax filings. He was paying developers overseas with untraceable Venmo transfers. And my favorite detail, he had listed one of my stolen antique rugs as collateral in a meeting with a potential investor. He'd built the entire thing on a tower of matchsticks. Theo gave me everything in a neat report, including where he was operating from, a cheap co-working space downtown with a broken elevator and shared toilets. It was time. I submitted anonymous complaints to every agency I could think of: IRS, city permits, Department of Labor, Business Licensing Bureau. I attached scanned documents from Theo's report, including emails Patrick had sent boasting about tax avoidance. Then I went a step further. I took out an ad in the city's most read business paper. Patrick Flannery's Skyverge Mobility. Is this startup cutting corners with your investment? It ran alongside an exposé I submitted under a pseudonym. The next day, I visited the building where he worked. The company's name had been ripped off the glass door. Inside, boxes were stacked in a hallway. I saw Patrick through the glass, red-faced, shouting into his phone. No, you listen to me. It's all fake. It's a smear campaign. I don't care what the papers say. Hello? Hello? He slammed the phone down. I turned and walked away, my heels echoing with satisfaction. 3 months later, I was back in the same motel room when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Alyssa? Her voice was shaky. Mom? Silence. Then, I left him. He's ruined. He owes money to everyone. He told me I had to take the fall for the business fraud or he'd say I was in on it. I sold your things. I did it. I thought I was helping him, but I messed up. I messed everything up. More silence. I want to come home. I sat still. My fingers pressed tightly around the cheap motel cup of lukewarm coffee. Finally, I said, I don't have a home anymore, Alyssa. I know. I'll fix it. I'll work. I'll do whatever it takes. I just want my mom back. It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough. I'll meet you at the old house, I said. Bring everything you can find. And this time, I would file the police report if she dared lie to me again. 3 days after the phone call, I stood in front of my old house, my former house, waiting. The sun had barely risen, casting pale orange light across the empty lawn where my bird bath used to be. I crossed my arms, more out of instinct than cold. I wasn't sure what I expected. Then I saw her. Alyssa pulled up in a beat-up rental van. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep or crying. I didn't care which. She got out and opened the back doors. Inside were 5 boxes. 5. For a lifetime. I got what I could, she said, avoiding my gaze. Some of it was already sold. Some stuff Patrick kept. Said it was part of his capital contribution. He wouldn't give it up. I didn't answer. I just walked to the van and opened one of the boxes. Inside were scraps of my life, my wedding album, a chipped teacup, a half-burnt photo frame, Two of my husband's ties still nodded like ghosts. The third box held my mother's Bible. Pages wrinkled, the spine bent, but still there. I swallowed hard. She tried to speak, but I raised a hand. Not yet. We carried the boxes in silence into the shell of the house. It was as empty as ever. I hadn't set foot inside since that day with the police. Now I stood where my living room used to be and looked at the girl I had raised. "Alyssa," I said quietly, "why didn't you call me? Why didn't you ask?" She bit her lip until it turned white. "Because I knew you'd say no. I would have helped. Not him. You." "I thought I was helping him for us, Mom," she said, her voice cracking. "He told me I had to believe in him. That love meant sacrifices. He said he needed me to prove I was serious. So, I proved it. You sacrificed me." The words hung in the air, heavier than any accusation I'd ever spoken. Alyssa broke down. Right there on the floor. Hands over her face, knees drawn up, sobbing like a child. I didn't comfort her. I watched. And when she finally looked up, her face smeared with tears, I said what she least expected. "I forgive you." She blinked. "But I'm not forgetting." A beat passed. Her breath caught. What does that mean?" "It means you don't get a clean slate. You get a chance to earn your place back." And then I gave her a list. Every morning at 7 a.m., she would report to my motel with coffee and a notebook. She would take notes as I dictated everything I remembered about the items that were stolen: serial numbers, dates, brands, sentimental history. Together, we began the slow process of itemizing losses for a case I hadn't officially filed yet. She asked once why I was writing everything down so obsessively. "Because memory is the only thing no one can steal," I said. "And if they ever try again, I'll make sure the law remembers too." Meanwhile, I kept tabs on Patrick. His name was now floating in legal forums and local business boards as a cautionary tale. Word spread fast that his previous startups had been scams dressed in flashy branding. Several of his victims, former investors and friends, contacted me through anonymous tips. One even mailed me a manila envelope of financial records Patrick had forged to pitch a loan. Every piece of it went into a growing file labeled F. For Flannery. For fraud. For finish him. I wasn't through. Not even close. Because he'd taken more than furniture and stolen dreams. He had taken my daughter. Now I was taking her back. Alyssa arrived every morning as promised, sometimes 5 minutes early, never late. She'd knock softly, wait by the door of my motel room with 2 coffees in hand, hers black, mine with 1 cream, no sugar. She never forgot. That told me one thing: she still remembered who I was. Somewhere beneath the fog of Patrick's influence, the daughter I raised was still there. But I didn't make it easy for her. Each session, I gave her one new task. On Monday, I made her call pawn shops and antique dealers to track anything that might have passed through with her name on it. On Tuesday, she had to request a full list of Patrick's investors. I knew she'd signed contracts under duress or ignorance, but I wanted her to understand the extent of her entanglement. By Friday, she was quiet. Eyes heavier. Voice thinner. She'd stopped asking how I was sleeping. Because she knew I wasn't. And neither was she. That week, we recovered 4 more items: my husband's pocket watch from a pawn shop on the east side, my ceramic rooster from a garage sale listing, and 2 watercolors painted by my grandmother, found through a Reddit art forum. Alyssa didn't cry when she retrieved them. She cried later, in the car, when no one could see except me. Meanwhile, Patrick was unraveling. Skyverge Mobility was officially defunct. Someone had leaked all of his source code online with a note attached, built on stolen bones. The media ran with it. The startup that sank in a week, one headline read. I clipped it, pasted it into my file. He filed a lawsuit against the anonymous tipster. It was thrown out. Filed for a restraining order against one of the investors, denied. Then he tried to sue me for slander, claiming I damaged his reputation. The letter arrived on motel stationery. Alyssa opened it first. She looked pale as she read the print. He says you cost him his future, she murmured. I took the letter. Read it twice. Then folded it neatly and slid it into the trash without a word. I didn't cost him anything, I said. I just lit a match under the lies he built his kingdom on. 2 weeks later, we stood in the empty living room of my house. It was time to decide, rebuild or sell. Alyssa wanted to fix everything: furniture, floors, walls, trim. She begged me to let her stay and help. I want to earn my way back into your life, she said. Let me help you build it again. I looked around the space. It had once held my entire life. But now? It was just square footage. Wood and drywall. No, I said. Her face fell. Because I'm not building this house again, I continued. I'm building my house. Something new. Something stronger. She stood silent, eyes wide. If you want to be part of it, I said slowly, you can't just help rebuild the walls. You have to fix what you broke. She nodded. For the first time, I believed she meant it. That night, we stayed in the house, sleeping bags, 2 lanterns, and a playlist of songs I used to hum while cleaning. She fell asleep first. I stayed awake, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to her breathe. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. The cracks were still there. But I finally believed they could be sealed. Patrick had gone quiet. No lawsuits, no texts, no smug social media updates about grinding or hustling. Just silence. But I knew silence wasn't surrender, it was retreat. Planning. Repositioning. Which is why I decided to visit the one person who might tell me what his next move was. His mother. Eileen Flannery lived just outside town in a 2-story Victorian that was falling apart at the seams. Paint peeling, porch sagging, wind chimes made from bottle caps. I remembered her from a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago, the only one I ever tolerated with Patrick in the room. She'd worn sunglasses indoors and called Alyssa Allie the entire evening. But Eileen had something I needed: knowledge. I arrived unannounced. I wore a soft lavender sweater, no makeup, wedding ring still on. The look of a mother wronged, not a mother furious. I knocked. She answered in a housecoat and slippers, squinting through cigarette smoke. Ashton, she said, surprised. Eileen, I returned. Mind if I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. Her living room smelled like sour wine and menthol. The cushions were torn. There were 3 ashtrays on the coffee table and an unopened bill stuffed between couch cushions. Make it quick, she said. I'm not in the mood for Bible studies or apologies. I came to ask about Patrick. That got her attention. What about him? Where is he? What's he planning? And what lies has he been feeding you lately? She scoffed. You think that boy talks to me? He hasn't answered my calls in 2 months. I found out about the business collapse from a neighbor. Thought you two got married or something, the way Alyssa followed him around. I said nothing. Eileen shook her head. He's always been like this. Can't hold a job. Thinks the world owes him something. Since he was 17, he's had 6 empires collapse. You know what he told me after he stole my retirement money for his crypto scheme? You should have invested more aggressively, Mom. I exhaled slowly. So you knew? Knew? She laughed bitterly. I knew the day he told me he was starting a water filter company and tried to sell me a Brita I already owned. He's a con man with baby blue eyes and a gold-plated mouth. The charm fades fast. I studied her. There was no anger in her voice. Just regret. You ever think about stopping him? I asked. Eileen met my gaze, her expression hollow. Every day, she said. But you can't stop a fire that feeds itself. Best you can do is wait until it burns out. Or burns everything. I stood. Thank you for your time. As I walked toward the door, she called out. Ashton. Yes. I'm sorry he took your things. But he took something worse from me. He made me ashamed to be his mother. I nodded once, then left. That night, Alyssa and I returned to the house. She was sanding the windowsills while I cataloged what few items we'd recovered. When I told her where I'd been, she dropped the sandpaper. You what? I met with Eileen. Why would you? Because you're his past. But she's his blueprint. Alyssa sank onto the windowsill, shaking her head. Mom, he's not going to stop. I know, I said. That's why I'm not either. Because some people burn bridges. And some people stand on the ashes with gasoline. It happened a week after my visit to Eileen. Alyssa and I had finished replacing the light fixtures in the kitchen. We were just about to call it a night when her phone lit up on the countertop. She glanced at it, froze. Patrick. She didn't answer, but I told her to. Put it on speaker. His voice came through, calm, casual, like nothing had happened. Hey, babe. I heard you've been busy playing house with your mom. That's cute. Really cute. But I think we should talk. Just us. Alyssa said nothing. I've got a proposal, he went on. I know you're mad, and maybe I crossed a few lines. But listen, we can still make this work. I'm building something new. Bigger. Better. I just need a few things from you. There it was. The real reason he called. I need access to your old laptop, he said. There's some code I stored on it. I know it's yours, but technically I helped write it. You give me that, and we can call it even. You don't want this to get messy, do you? He was bluffing, of course. Threatening legal drama with nothing to stand on. I motioned to Alyssa. Keep him talking. She cleared her throat. Patrick, what if I want to help you? On one condition. He perked up instantly. Name it. I want to meet. Just us. To talk. 1 hour. No games. Silence on the line, then, deal. She looked at me, eyebrows raised. I nodded. The plan was already forming in my head. We chose a neutral location, the small cafe where Patrick had once pitched his first fake company to my husband, trying to weasel a $10,000 investment out of him. I remembered every detail, the smug smile, the way he called me Ash, like we were old friends instead of adversaries. This time, I was waiting in the parking lot in Theo's car, watching from behind tinted windows. Alyssa went in alone. She wore her old blue cardigan, the one Patrick always said made her look too grown up. She walked tall. Inside, I saw him greet her like nothing had happened. Smiling. Arms open. That smile would be short-lived. Because what Patrick didn't know was that the laptop he wanted access to, it didn't exist anymore. What he also didn't know. Theo was wired into the booth behind him, recording everything. And Alyssa? She was following the script we'd rehearsed the night before. How soon do you need the files? She asked sweetly. Immediately, he said. Investors are biting. I just need that prototype code. And those login credentials we used for the tax filings. Remember that shared Dropbox folder? I need that too. He was giving us everything on tape. Financial fraud. Code theft. Use of confidential business information for unauthorized resale. Violation of at least 3 federal regulations. When Alyssa asked if he wanted her to access the government loan portal again, just like last time, Patrick smiled and tapped her hand. Don't worry. You're protected. You're my girl. It was the last lie he'd ever tell her. The recording was clean. Legal. Perfect. We submitted it anonymously to the Business Oversight Committee. The email bounced back 3 hours later with a single-sentence reply. Thank you. We've been waiting for someone to confirm this. Apparently, we weren't the only ones watching Patrick. He was arrested 2 days later, charged with wire fraud, tax evasion, and misrepresentation of assets during federal grant applications. His bail was set high, too high for even his flashiest friends to cover. The morning the news broke, Alyssa sat beside me on the motel bed, eyes glassy but dry. You think he'll try to pin it on me? She asked. If he does, I said, he'll wish he hadn't. Because I had copies of everything, including the part where he said, you're protected. You're my girl. But she wasn't. Not anymore. Now, she was mine again. The newspapers called it the Sky Verge scam. For weeks, Patrick's face was splashed across every local news outlet and tech blog. A smirking headshot from a press release now turned ironic caption fodder. Visionary entrepreneur or charming criminal? One article asked. I didn't need to read the conclusion to know the answer. Alyssa stayed mostly quiet during those weeks, rebuilding more than furniture. She volunteered to help paint the house, room by room. She returned missing heirlooms that she found listed online under anonymous seller accounts. She even found my father's military medals in a thrift store 3 towns away. Still, her shame lingered. It clung to her like a second skin. One morning over coffee, she asked, "Why haven't you yelled at me?" I looked at her, really looked. Because yelling is for people who don't want to be heard. I want you to listen. That morning she did. And every morning after. The day of the arraignment, Theo drove me to court. He offered to go in my place. I told him no. I needed to see Patrick caged. We sat in the back row of the gallery, away from the press. He was brought in wearing county orange, his designer shoes traded for plastic slides. He still tried to flash his old grin, the one he used when cornered. The charm offensive. But his eyes kept darting. Searching. Hoping Alyssa had come to see him. She hadn't. He saw me instead. And for the first time, I saw fear. The prosecutor read the charges, line by line. 22 counts. Wire fraud. Theft. Tax evasion. False representations to investors. Unlawful access to government aid. It was a symphony of justice, and I savored every note. He pled not guilty. Of course he did. Back at the house, I found Alyssa scrubbing the kitchen floor. It didn't need scrubbing. You don't have to clean every mistake with a mop, I said. I know, she whispered. But it's the only thing I can do right now. I handed her an envelope. What's this? A job application. She blinked. Mom, why? Because you're not going to spend your life cleaning up someone else's mess. You're going to build your own. She stared at the envelope. It was for a local nonprofit that helped women recover from financial abuse and toxic relationships. The director owed me a favor from years ago, something about a fundraiser I saved when her headline act canceled last minute and I booked a jazz quartet from my church. I pulled a few strings. You start as a program assistant. If they like you, you move up. If you hate it, you try something else. But you try. She hugged me before I could stop her. This time, I let her. 2 weeks later, Patrick tried to call her from jail. She didn't pick up. The next day, she filed a restraining order. And that evening, she brought back something that made me stop in my tracks. My husband's cufflinks. I found them in a consignment box at one of Patrick's old apartments, she said. I held them in my hand. Heavy. Solid. Familiar. I thought they were gone, I said quietly. She looked down. They weren't. They were just in the wrong hands. It was the first time she admitted what this had all been. Not just theft, not just betrayal, but a transfer. And now, piece by piece, it was all coming back to where it belonged. The house was still mostly empty, furniture slowly trickling back in through estate sales and odd recoveries, but it no longer felt hollow. Not with Alyssa there. Not with her cooking eggs in the morning while apologizing for burning toast like it was some kind of family ritual. But the pain still crept in uninvited. Especially when I opened drawers and found them empty. Or reached for a book that I forgot was gone. One evening, I opened the attic crawl space and found the fireproof box still tucked under the insulation. It had escaped the perch. Inside, my wedding ring, 2 savings bonds, a bundle of letters from my husband, and a small velvet pouch of heirloom jewelry, my mother's brooch, a bracelet my grandmother wore on her wedding day, and a pair of pearl earrings I'd planned to pass down to Alyssa. I almost didn't show her, but something told me she needed to see it. She held the pouch like it might disappear. Tears welled in her eyes. I sold so much, she whispered. And you still have this? Not everything can be bought, I said. And not everything was lost. She clutched the pouch to her chest like a lifeline. It was the first time she didn't apologize. She didn't have to. The next morning, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Delilah Crane. We'd worked together in a real estate firm in our 40s. She'd left to start her own property management business and made a fortune flipping houses in the next town over. She heard about what happened from the local paper. Not the scandal, me. The stories everywhere, Ash, she said. But no one's talking about you. Just that you were the mother. That's all they say. I sighed. That's all they need to know. No, she snapped. That's all they think they need to know. But I remember you. You were the glue at every company we worked at. You raised a daughter on your own, built a life after losing your husband, and now? You're a headline side note. I said nothing. Start a business, she said. What? You heard me. Use this mess. Own it. Use that anger and start a damn business. Delilah, I'm 70 next year. So what? She said. That just means you don't have time to waste. Start something. Teach women how to protect their assets. Educate people on family fraud. Open a consultancy. A YouTube channel. Something. I didn't answer right away, but the idea stuck. That night, I sat down and opened my laptop, the one Alyssa helped me buy again with her first 3 checks from the nonprofit. I opened a blank document. Typed one word, reclaim. Then I wrote the sentence that would become my business's tagline. You don't need revenge to win. You just need receipts. The next morning, I filed for a business license. Alyssa was the first to see the papers. You're serious, she said. I'm old, not dead, I replied. She grinned. You're kind of a badass. I raised an eyebrow. Kind of. We laughed. But under that laugh was something stronger, foundation. A new one. One that no one, not even Patrick, could take from us again. Starting a business at 69 wasn't easy. Especially when your office is a kitchen table and your marketing team consists of a half-skeptical daughter and a free Wix account. But Delilah was right. I had experience, I had purpose, and I had the kind of story people don't forget. Reclaim was born not as a revenge agency, but as a lifeline. A consultancy for women who'd been blindsided by family, by fraud, by so-called loved ones. I didn't advertise with flyers or social media hashtags. I started small, quiet, local. One weekend, I got my first client. It wasn't who I expected. Her name was Clara. She was 72, walked with a cane and a skull, and she showed up on my porch with a folder thick enough to choke a shredder. I heard what your daughter did, she said flatly. I need your help. I didn't flinch. What happened? My son drained my account, she said. Said he'd pay off my property taxes. Instead, he bought a boat. A boat? A goddamn pontoon. I live in a retirement condo. I liked Clara immediately. She slid the folder toward me. Inside were bank statements, email printouts, even a notarized power of attorney document that I immediately flagged as suspicious. How'd he get you to sign this? I asked. Said I needed it in case I had a stroke. Did you? I had a margarita. I took her case for free. Partly because I needed to test my system. Mostly because I saw something in her, something angry, something humiliated, something that looked a lot like me 3 months ago. Alyssa helped. She scanned every page, organized everything, and drafted a summary letter that made even Theo whistle when he reviewed it. This is strong, he said. You could take this straight to the DA's office. Clara didn't want court, though. She wanted reputation. His wife doesn't know, she said. She's been trying to get pregnant for 2 years. Thinks he's saving for a nursery. Meanwhile, he's cruising around like some sunburned Casanova. I want him scared. Shamed. We sent a single email to the wife. Attached were documents, screenshots, withdrawal records, and one image of the boat's registration tied directly to Clara's joint account. 3 days later, Clara got a voicemail. It was her son, crying. I messed up, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk? She deleted it. Didn't even blink. You don't always need to answer, she told me later. Sometimes the silence says everything. That night, I found Alyssa sitting on the front porch, feet tucked under her, eyes distant. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded. Then, I still don't get how you forgive me. I didn't say I did, I said. I am. Every day. Piece by piece. She looked down. I thought helping you would erase it. It won't. But I want to make it right. Then keep showing up. She nodded. And she did. The next morning, a check arrived in the mail. $500. Clara's thank you note read, "You reminded me who I was before they made me feel small. Use this to remind the next woman." I framed it. Right next to the license for Reclaim. Because this business wasn't just revenge. It was resurrection. 3 weeks into running Reclaim, I learned something unexpected. Helping people recover what they'd lost was addicting. But learning to say no? That was the real power. It started with a knock at my door. A woman stood there, mid-50s, well-dressed, red silk scarf knotted tight around her throat. Her eyes were dry, her posture tense. "I'm here for revenge," she said. She didn't blink. I invited her in, sat her down at the kitchen table that now doubled as my consultation desk. She introduced herself as Marina. She was a local professor. Her husband, also a professor, had left her for a younger woman. Their separation turned into a divorce. The divorce turned into a liquidation of everything. "He took my house, my car, and my name," she said. "He published our research under his name. Told the board I was unstable. Now he's tenured, and I'm renting a basement suite under a bakery." Her voice was flat, measured. It was the control of someone who had nothing else left to control. I asked for documents, emails, statements. She gave me a manila envelope. Inside were photos of her husband with his new girlfriend. At conferences, on trips, even one where they stood in front of a research slide that had her name scrubbed out and his added. But that wasn't what made me pause. The last photo was of his car. Scratched, slashed, keyed to the frame. "I did that," she said casually. "Felt good. But I want more." I looked her in the eye. "What kind of more?" She leaned in. "I want to ruin his career. Quietly. Permanently. I don't want him to know it's me. I want him to think karma caught up." I closed the file and slid it back. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I can't help you." Her expression didn't change. "Why not?" "Because I don't do destruction. I do reclamation. I don't break. I build back." She blinked. Then, slowly, she stood. As she reached the door, she turned. "Everyone thinks they're above revenge," she said. "Until they're the one choking on it." Then she was gone. Alyssa found me later, staring out the window, hands trembling slightly. "Who was that?" she asked. "No one," I said. "And that's exactly who she's about to become if she keeps walking that path." Alyssa sat beside me. "You did the right thing. It didn't feel like it. Because you're human. And she reminded you of the version of me you hated." I looked at her. "You were never her." "I was close. You were lost." "She's gone." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Alyssa handed me a package. From the courthouse. Inside, official notice. Patrick Flannery's trial date was set. 3 months from today. Fraud. Grand theft. Wire fraud. Abuse of legal documents. A potential 15 years. I read the words twice. Then folded them. "What now?" Alyssa asked. I turned to her. "Now," I said. "Now we prepare for the finale." Because the man who stole my life was about to learn what it felt like to lose his. 3 months sounded like a long time. But preparing for a courtroom war moves fast when the man on trial once used your family heirlooms as startup collateral. The district attorney's office reached out within a week of the trial notice. I met them in a conference room downtown, wood-paneled walls, bland coffee, and 2 state prosecutors with pens ready. The lead attorney, a woman named Danielle Torres, cut right to it. "Mr. Flannery has retained a defense team," she said. "They're trying to frame this as a misguided business venture gone awry, not a criminal act. They'll say your daughter gave him permission to use the funds and assets. They're already floating the word gift." I stiffened. Danielle opened a folder. "We'd like you to testify." I nodded once. "Of course." She hesitated. "There's something else," she said. "If he pleads out before the trial, it's possible he'll serve minimal time. Maybe probation and fines. If that happens, your daughter's name may get dragged in as an accomplice, especially if he tries to implicate her to save himself." The room went cold. I knew Patrick. He would throw anyone under the bus. Even Alyssa. "Is there a way to protect her?" I asked. Danielle looked me dead in the eyes. "There is. But it requires you to sign a full affidavit, not just about the theft. About everything you knew. About how long you suspected he was manipulating her. About every interaction you had with both of them, even if it paints her in a less than flattering light." I knew what that meant. It meant throwing Alyssa under the microscope to pull her out of the fire. I signed it. I didn't tell her. I couldn't. Not yet. Because the shame she still carried was like glass in her throat, cutting every time she spoke about that part of her life. Instead, I focused her attention elsewhere. Like on helping Clara submit her official claim for restitution. Or on prepping Reclaim's first workshop, hosted at the community center. 10 women showed up. Each had been scammed, abandoned, or drained by someone they once trusted. We called the session, burned but not broken. Alyssa read the testimonials afterward. One said, "I thought I was stupid. Now I know I was just trusting the wrong person." She cried. But it wasn't the same kind of crying I'd seen in the motel months ago. This one had hope stitched inside. One evening, I got a letter. Typed. No return address. But I knew the voice immediately. Patrick. He'd written it from county lockup. Inside were 5 pages of self-justification, veiled threats, and grand claims about being misunderstood. But the final paragraph stopped me cold. "You should have pressed charges on Alyssa when you had the chance. Now you'll both go down together." I didn't show her the letter. Instead, I added it to my trial folder under a section labeled Desperation. Because nothing screams guilty like threatening the mother of your co-defendant. Especially when that mother has copies of everything. As the days ticked down, Alyssa grew quieter. She began to journal again. She stopped asking questions about the trial. She just helped. Steady. Focused. One night, while we were reupholstering a chair together, she said, "Do you ever wish I was someone else?" I looked at her. "No," I said. "I just wish you'd become you a little sooner." She smiled. And that smile, half sad, half proud, was enough. For now. The courthouse was old, 3 stories of gray stone and narrow hallways that always smelled like must and old coffee. On the morning of the trial, I stood outside it, staring up at the cracked courthouse clock. It was stuck at 6:42. Maybe broken. Maybe frozen in the exact moment some other fool realized their world was about to collapse. But the real breaking point had come the night before. We'd just finished dinner, roast chicken, nothing fancy. Alyssa washed dishes while I organized the trial folder for the 100th time. She turned off the faucet, dried her hands, and said the words I'd been waiting to hear for months. "Do you think I deserve to be in that courtroom tomorrow?" I didn't answer immediately. She came and sat down across from me, hands folded, her jaw tight. "Don't lie. Just tell me the truth. Should I be on that stand too?" I closed the folder and met her eyes. "You were tricked. But you weren't blind. You let him speak for both of you. And you let him steal not just from me, but from you. Because every time you nodded along with his lies, you gave away a part of yourself. And that's the real crime." She swallowed hard. "So, yes. No," I said. "You don't belong on trial. But you do belong in that courtroom. Sitting beside me. Owning it. All of it." She exhaled, then nodded slowly. "I want to testify," she said. "If they let me, they will." And they did. Courtroom 2B was packed. Reporters. Local business watchers. A few victims from Patrick's other ventures. I spotted Delilah in the back row, arms crossed like she was ready to charge the bench herself. Patrick sat at the defense table, clean-shaven, suit pressed, eyes calculating. He saw us walk in. And his smirk flickered. We sat. Waited. The prosecution opened with facts, dates, amounts, signatures. They laid out the money trail like a map to hell. Then it was my turn. I stood, took the oath, and told my story. How I came home to an empty house. How I ended up in a hospital bed on my birthday, my blood pressure trying to kill me. How my daughter confessed to trading every piece of my life for the promise of someone else's fortune. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I simply spoke. And when I was done, they called Alyssa. She walked to the stand like she was walking through fire. But she didn't flinch. "I believed in him," she said. And I betrayed my mother because of that belief. I thought I was helping build something. I didn't realize I was helping burn something down. She paused. And I've spent every day since trying to rebuild what I destroyed. Not for forgiveness. For understanding. Silence hung over the room. Even Patrick looked stunned. Then the defense stood. They tried to rattle her. "Didn't you benefit from the funds? Didn't you move in with him immediately after the theft? Didn't you sign off on documents?" "Yes," she said every time. But I didn't know I was committing fraud. I knew I was making a mistake. That's what makes me guilty of stupidity. Not theft. The courtroom shifted. Respect isn't something you ask for. It's something you reclaim. And in that moment, Alyssa did. The trial lasted 4 days. For days of evidence, testimony, defense attempts to twist timelines, and prosecutors dissecting Patrick's self-proclaimed genius into a blueprint for fraud. By the final afternoon, the jury only needed 3 hours. Patrick sat with his attorney, whispering, glancing at us as if any moment we'd leap across the aisle and say it had all been a joke. That this humiliation was enough. That we could call it even. We didn't. We sat straight-backed, waiting. The foreman stood and handed the bailiff a slip. On all counts, the judge read aloud, "We find the defendant guilty." No shouting. No gasps. Just a verdict. Patrick didn't even blink. He just slumped back, lips tight, like a child being told his toys had been donated without his permission. The judge announced sentencing would come the following month. Patrick would remain in custody until then. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Flashes. Questions. Alyssa, were you complicit? Ashton, what does justice feel like? I didn't answer. Justice, as it turns out, feels like standing in the same place you were broken and not flinching. That night, Alyssa opened a bottle of wine Delilah had dropped off after the verdict. We sat on the porch, feet up, not talking. Just breathing. For the first time in what felt like years, there were no threats hanging over us. No deadlines. No fear. Then I handed her an envelope. "What's this?" "Something I kept from you," I said. "Because I didn't think you were ready to read it." She opened it slowly. It was the letter Patrick had sent me from jail. The one where he tried to threaten us both. She read it once. Then again. Then folded it. "I'm sorry you had to read that," she said. "I'm not," I said. "It reminded me why I chose not to destroy you when I had the chance." She looked at me. "I could have turned you in," I said softly. "Put your name on the report. Let the prosecutors drag you in with him. But I didn't. Not because I'm noble. But because you came back before I asked." She swallowed hard. "You came back before the reckoning. That's what saved you." Alyssa reached over and gripped my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. We sat in silence a while longer. The wind picked up. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime rang. Then she asked something I didn't expect. "Do you want your things back?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She pulled out her phone and showed me a message thread. It was with one of Patrick's old storage buddies. A man who ran an under-the-table storage rental lot outside town. "He's willing to let us in," she said. "Patrick used a fake name on the lease. But he knows it's our stuff." My pulse quickened. "Tomorrow?" I asked. "Tomorrow," she nodded. And just like that, a new kind of justice came into focus. The kind where you don't just testify. You take back. You don't just recover. You reclaim. The storage lot sat on the edge of town, behind a tire shop and a pawn store, the kind of place where forgotten things went to die. Rusted fences. Gravel drive. Rows of metal doors that creaked in the wind like they remembered secrets no one else wanted to. We arrived just before noon. Alyssa hadn't said much that morning. She'd packed gloves, a flashlight, and a thick folder of printed photos, pictures of our furniture, electronics, keepsakes. Evidence, in case the man changed his mind. But he didn't. The manager was a man named Curtis. Bald, polite, eyes a little too fast. He walked us to unit number 77 and pointed at the padlock. "Fake name, like I told you. But I know who rented it. You've got 20 minutes before I pretend I never met you." Then he left. Alyssa handed me the key. "You open it," she said. I did. The door groaned upward, metal screaming with disuse. Inside, the past waited. Stacked chairs. Rolled up rugs. The dining table I bought after my husband passed, the one I refused to replace because it still smelled like lemon oil and memory. Even the coat rack with the bent hook was there, stuffed behind boxes marked miscellaneous, in Patrick's handwriting. I stepped inside. Dust bloomed in the air. Every step was a rediscovery. My jewelry box. My photo albums. A crate of Christmas decorations, including the angel tree topper with the chipped wing. Tears welled, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I opened the nearest box. Inside, my husband's books. They still smelled like him. We worked in silence, photographing everything, marking it all down. A few things were missing: my antique clock, the television, the silverware set that had belonged to my grandmother. But most of it was here. Why didn't he sell it all? Alyssa whispered. Because he thought he had time, I said. He thought he'd use it later, pawn it off piece by piece once people stopped paying attention. She nodded slowly. I hate who I was when I helped him. I looked at her. Then keep becoming someone else. Curtis reappeared 15 minutes later, chewing a toothpick. I'll give you a deal, he said. Pay the balance and the unit's yours. How much? I asked. $140. 3 months back rent. Paid in cash today. I didn't flinch. Neither did Alyssa. She pulled out a bank envelope and handed it over. Keep the change, she said. Curtis grinned. Pleasure doing business with you, ladies. As he walked off, she turned to me. That was money from my 4th paycheck. I didn't want to tell you until I knew it was worth it. I reached out and touched her arm. It was. Because this wasn't just furniture. This was our life, boxed and forgotten, waiting for someone to care enough to unlock it. We rented a truck and loaded everything ourselves. 3 hours of sweat, dust, and occasional laughter as we uncovered odd relics: a singing bass toy my late husband once insisted on keeping, a VHS of Alyssa's middle school recital, a novelty apron that read "Kiss the Chef or Else." By sunset, we stood in our driveway, watching the truck rumble to a stop. The house, still sparse, would finally feel full again. Not just with things, but with return. The house looked almost like it had before Patrick, before the theft, before the betrayal. The rugs were rolled out. The couch sat square in the living room, still carrying the faded indent of where I used to sip tea and read in the afternoons. The kitchen chairs creaked like they were happy to be home. But one thing was still missing. The grandfather clock. My husband's clock. The one he restored piece by piece during his last year alive, polishing every gear like it held time itself still. It hadn't been in the storage unit. It hadn't turned up in any of the pawn shops or antique stores Alyssa had scoured. And I hadn't forgotten it. Not for a second. That's why I went to see him. Not Patrick. Theo. The private investigator who'd started this journey with me. He still owed me one more favor, and I was ready to collect. I need to find it, I told him, sliding a photo across the desk. Theo studied the image, nodded, and cracked his knuckles. I remember this piece, he said. Patrick tried to sell it. Too hot. Too unique. No one wanted to touch it. Then where's it? Theo grinned. I think I know. The man's name was Grant Meller. Ran an underground collectibles trade out of a supposed restoration shop on the south edge of the city. No website. No receipts. Just whispers and occasional listings under fake names on online auctions. Theo got us a meeting. Grant didn't know who I was. He thought I was a client. A potential buyer. He led me into a back room filled with clocks. Mantle clocks, cuckoo clocks, old factory timers. And at the very back, covered in a thick plastic tarp, was mine. I knew it instantly. Even under dust, I could see the crack in the top veneer, one my husband never got around to fixing. I walked straight to it. Beautiful, isn't it? Grant said. Came in a few months ago. Seller said it was from an estate. I'll take it, I said. He chuckled. It's not for sale anymore. I'm keeping it. Too rare. I turned to him, calm. Study. I'm not here to buy, I said. I'm here to reclaim. I handed him a folder. Ownership records, police reports, witness statements, photos of the clock in my home over the past 20 years. He opened it. His face fell. You can keep denying it, I said. Or you can do the right thing before this turns into a raid. Theo stepped forward from the corner, flashing his license. Grant said nothing for a long time. Then, with a sigh, he stepped aside. Take it, he muttered. Just get out of here. We did. The grandfather clock stood once more in my hallway by nightfall. Ticking. Steady. And I stood in front of it with Alyssa by my side, listening. Did you ever think you'd get it back? She asked. No, I said. But I didn't stop looking. She nodded slowly. Thank you for not giving up. I looked at her. On the clock. I asked. She shook her head. On me. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because some things don't need to be said. They just need to be returned. The courthouse felt colder the second time. Not because of the weather, it was August, and the sun scorched the pavement outside. But inside those stone walls, everything felt sealed off. Like the building itself knew judgment was about to fall. Patrick's sentencing was scheduled for 10 a.m. We arrived at 9:30 and sat in the same pew-like benches we'd occupied during the trial. This time, the crowd was thinner. The press had moved on. The scandal wasn't new anymore. Only the people who mattered were left. Patrick entered in a prison-issued jumpsuit. The charm was gone. No grin. No bounce in his step. He looked at Alyssa once, briefly. But she didn't flinch. She stared straight ahead. The judge entered and the room stood. Then it began. The prosecutor gave a statement. Short. Sharp. Efficient. A reminder of the charges, the evidence, and the damage caused, not just financial, but personal. Then came Patrick's defense attorney. He asked for leniency. My client has no prior convictions. He was under significant financial pressure. He's shown remorse. I wanted to laugh. But I didn't. Instead, I waited for the judge to call my name. He did. I stood, walked forward, and gave my victim impact statement. I was robbed, I began, but not just of possessions. I was robbed of trust, of peace, of dignity. I came home on my birthday to find everything I owned gone. My memories, boxed and sold. My name, twisted into a lie. My daughter, turned into a thief. I paused, then looked directly at Patrick. But that's not the worst part. The worst part was that you thought I'd stay broken. That I'd be too weak to fight back. That I'd just disappear. I stepped closer to the railing. But I didn't. And I won't. And I'm here to make sure that what you destroyed is never forgotten. Not by me. Not by her. Not by anyone. I returned to my seat. The courtroom was silent. Then the judge spoke. And the words that followed felt like breath after drowning. Mr. Flannery, you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in state prison. You will be eligible for parole in 7. Restitution is ordered in the amount of $94,300. Patrick didn't move. Didn't speak. Just sat there. Empty. The bailiff moved to escort him out. He turned one last time toward Alyssa. Please, he mouthed. But she didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just watched him disappear. Outside, we stood on the steps in the hot morning sun. Alyssa looked like she was trying to decide whether to cry or scream. I said nothing. She spoke first. It's over. No, I said. It's done. There's a difference. She nodded slowly. I think I want to leave town, she said. Just for a little while. Volunteer with a nonprofit's sister branch out west. Get some space. I looked at her. You don't need permission. I know, she said. But I wanted you to hear it from me. I pulled her into a hug. You go find yourself, I said. And bring her back home when you're ready. She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just stood there, holding on. Because even after justice, healing takes its own time. Alyssa left town 2 days after sentencing. 1 suitcase, 1 backpack, and a farewell hug on the porch that lasted a second longer than necessary. I'll call every Sunday, she promised. You'd better. Then she was gone. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. But not empty. I spent the next week restoring what I could. My dining table reclaimed its place beneath the chandelier. My books returned to their rightful shelves, organized alphabetically, just the way Harold used to do it. Then, one afternoon, I found a letter. Not from Alyssa. From him. My late husband. It had slipped between 2 books, likely dislodged in the theft and never noticed during the return. The envelope was yellowed. The handwriting unmistakable. To Ashton, for your 70th, in case I don't make it. I sat down slowly. Opened it with trembling hands. Inside was 1 page. Ash. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't be there for your birthday, but you're still standing. And that's all I need to know. I've watched you endure more than most women could bear. And I know life may try to break you again. But you won't let it. You never do. You're not made of glass. You're made of the same steel they forge legends from. If something's been taken from you, I know you'll find your way back to it, or build something better in its place. Whatever's missing, it's not your fault. Whatever's broken, it can be rebuilt. And whoever hurt you, you have my full permission to haunt them with your strength. Happy birthday, Ash. You've always been more than enough. Love. I didn't cry. I laughed. A short, sharp sound that escaped my throat like it had been locked in there for months. He knew. Even then. Later that evening, I heard a knock. I assumed it was the mailman. It wasn't. It was Clara, the woman with the boat-thieving son. She stood on the porch holding a tray of lemon bars and a smirk. You look like someone who just remembered how to breathe. Close, I said. Come in. She stepped inside and let out a low whistle. Looks like a home again. Feels like one too. She handed me the lemon bars. I wanted to say thank you again, she said. But also, I've got a friend. She's in trouble. Not the legal kind. The family kind. I raised an eyebrow. She's afraid of pressing charges. Said she doesn't want to destroy what's left of her family tree. I told her you don't destroy trees, you prune dead branches. I smiled. She want to talk? She's outside. I opened the door. And there stood a woman in her 60s, pale, nervous, holding a folder. I heard you help people reclaim more than just furniture, she said. I stepped aside. Come in. Let's talk. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every woman who'd been gutted and left standing in the doorway of her own life, wondering where everything went. This was about reclaim. And it had just begun. Word spread faster than I expected. First Clara's friend. Then another woman from the nonprofit Alyssa used to work at. Then someone who found me through an online support forum. Within 3 weeks, I had more inquiries than I could answer over the phone. So I booked a space. A church basement. Cheap, private, and neutral. We called it the Circle. Every Tuesday night, women sat in folding chairs, each with a folder, a story, a name someone they trusted had tried to erase. They weren't broken. Just temporarily displaced. One Tuesday, I asked them a question. How many of you were told you were overreacting? Every hand went up. How many of you were told it's just money? All but one. How many of you lost something you can never get back? Silence. And then, all of them. Not everything lost was monetary. Some lost homes. Some lost children. Some lost years. Some lost themselves. And every single one had been told to move on. That's what Reclaim was fighting. Not just fraud. Not just theft. But erasure. After the meeting, a woman named Dana stayed behind. She was in her 50s, with perfectly dyed hair and hands that trembled when she tried to sip coffee. My husband bought 3 properties in my name, she whispered. I didn't know until I got the foreclosure notice. Now the IRS thinks I'm the criminal. I reviewed her folder. Her name was on every deed. Every mortgage. Her signature, forged with shocking accuracy. You're not alone, I said. I feel like I am. You're not anymore. She left that night with a plan. And a lawyer's number I trusted. She came back the next week. And the week after. And one day, she smiled. Like it didn't hurt to breathe anymore. Back home, I added a new drawer to my filing cabinet. Not for cases. For victories. Every time a woman reclaimed something, a bank account, a car title, a house key, I printed it out, documented it, and slid it into that drawer. It was more than paper. It was evidence. That what we were doing mattered. That what I had lost wasn't for nothing. On a quiet Sunday, Alyssa called. She sounded tired, but hopeful. I helped a woman leave her husband this week, she said. He was draining her accounts. Had her convinced she was going crazy. Gaslighting her with fake bills, staged bank alerts. Sound familiar? I closed my eyes. Too familiar. I told her your story, Alyssa said. And she stayed. I didn't speak for a moment. Then, how are you? She hesitated. I still think about it, she said. What I did. Good. Good. Because guilt means your compass still works. Just don't live in it. She sniffled. I miss you. I miss you too. And we just stayed on the line. 2 women, broken once. Healing now. That night, I stood in front of the grandfather clock. It ticked. Steady. Faithful. I reached into the drawer of victories and slid in Dana's case. One more win. One more reason to keep going. Because this wasn't just about justice. It was about restoration. And I was just getting started. It was a Thursday when he showed up. I was sorting paperwork at the kitchen table, 3 open folders, 1 steaming mug of tea, and an old Aretha Franklin record playing on low in the background. The knock came soft. Hesitant. I opened the door expecting Clara, maybe one of the circle regulars. It wasn't. It was Patrick's mother. She looked just like him, only worn, like a photograph left in the sun. Her eyes were red, her clothes clean but tired, and she clutched her purse like it was the only thing she had left. "I'm sorry to come like this," she said. "But I didn't know where else to go." I didn't move. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I know what he did. I've always known what he was capable of. I just didn't know how far he'd go until he took everything from you." I didn't respond. She took that as permission to continue. "I visited him last week. He's not well. Still pretending it was all a misunderstanding. Still saying he's the real victim." "Why are you here?" I asked, finally. She opened her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. "I found this in his room after he was arrested. I think it belonged to your husband." I took it, opened it. Inside, the missing cufflink. The one that had never turned up. Silver. Engraved with an H, just like the one I'd recovered from a thrift store. I didn't thank her. She didn't expect me to. She just nodded. And left. Later that night, I held the cufflink in my palm, heavy and warm. Not because of the metal. Because of the weight. This tiny object had been passed like a secret, hidden during betrayal, untouched by courts or police or headlines. It was proof. Proof that, even in the deepest parts of what Patrick stole, he knew it wasn't his. And he hid it anyway. That meant something. Not legally. But to me. I called Alyssa. Told her what happened. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then I don't know what to say. "You don't need to. I still hate him. You're allowed. But I hate the version of me that let him touch any of it even more." "Good. Do you think I'll ever stop?" I thought about that. About forgiveness. About grief. About the difference between moving on and moving forward. "No," I said. "But it won't hurt forever. Eventually it'll just remind you." "Of what?" "That you survived it." That weekend, I added another chair to the circle. Clara said the group was growing fast. A new name was whispered: widow cleaning. Men who preyed on grieving women, manipulating them into giving up homes, insurance policies, and identity in the name of starting fresh. We opened a file. Started tracking them. Because Reclaim wasn't just about cleaning up the past anymore. It was about protecting the future. One chair at a time. One story at a time. And for every woman who walked through my door holding a folder, I made sure she left with her spine a little straighter. The chair had been in the garage for decades, an antique rocker from my mother's house, heavy oak and worn leather. Harold hated it. Said it squeaked too much. I never could bring myself to throw it out. That Sunday, I finally brought it inside. Dusted it. Cleaned the cracks. Set it near the window where the light pooled in the afternoon. It wasn't just a chair anymore. It was a seat. A place for someone to reclaim. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, a girl no older than 20 showed up to the circle meeting. She didn't speak at first. Just listened. Watched. But when the others left, she lingered by the door. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I nodded. She sat in the chair. Squeaked. Smiled a little. "I'm Ellie." I sat across from her. She held out a folded paper. "Can I show you something?" It was a printed Venmo history. Hundreds of transactions. All sent to the same man. "My boyfriend," she said. He said he needed help with rent, then car repairs, then a startup. I sent him everything I had. Even opened 2 credit cards. I thought he'd come back. I didn't interrupt. She sniffled. "I know it's stupid. Everyone says it's stupid. But I didn't think it was. Not until he blocked me. Not until I saw him post pictures in another state with someone else." She had my necklace on. I leaned forward. "It's not stupid," I said. "It's human." She looked up. "You believed in someone. That's not the crime. The crime is when they make you feel like you were wrong for doing so. Her shoulders shook. I can't tell my parents, she whispered. They already think I'm a disappointment. You came here. That doesn't fix anything. It's a start. I handed her a notepad. Let's make a list. Of what? Of what's yours. What he took. What you still have. And what you're about to get back. That night, I wrote a new line on the whiteboard in my office. Reclaim is for any age. Because pain doesn't wait for wrinkles. Scammers don't care how old you are. Ellie's case wasn't large. No property. No legal contracts. But it was theft all the same. And theft of trust is the hardest to prosecute. The next day, I sat with Ellie and drafted 3 formal disputes to her credit card companies. We gathered screenshots, messages, receipts. I explained how to freeze her credit report. I gave her a script to report identity misuse. She hugged me when we finished. I didn't think anyone would help, she whispered. That's what they want you to believe, I said. That you're alone. But now you know better. She stepped out into the sunlight with her head higher. Not whole, but held. And that mattered. That evening, I sat in the squeaky chair with a glass of tea. Watched the sun dip behind the trees. And thought, this is why I survived. Not just to rebuild, but to help others rebuild too. Because sometimes, revenge looks like courtrooms. Sometimes it looks like storage units. And sometimes it's just an old chair by a sunny window, holding up someone who almost didn't get back up again. The man at the door was tall, gaunt, and had the kind of face that made you feel like you should already know him, but don't want to. He wore a suit that used to be expensive and eyes that had seen courtrooms too many times. I'm looking for Ashton, he said. You found her. I'm Ben Flannery, Patrick's older brother. I didn't move. I'm not here to fight, he said quickly. I'm here because I saw what you did. And I think you should know you weren't his only victim. I stepped back just enough to keep the screen door between us. Talk, I said. He nodded. Patrick scammed our parents. Took money from our father's pension under the pretense of investing it in a crypto startup. It disappeared. Then he took out loans in Mom's name. They didn't find out until collections started calling. I watched him. Measured him. Why no? I asked. Because I just came from visiting him. And he's still lying. Still blaming everyone but himself. You. My parents. Even me. Says you framed him. That made me laugh. Ben didn't. He says Alyssa helped, he added. That it was all her idea. That she seduced him into the scam. That killed the laugh in my throat. Of course he did. He's already drafting some memoir, calls it Stolen Promises, the true story behind the scam. Says it's his side. Says he's the real victim. I shook my head. Is this a warning? No, Ben said. It's an offer. Of what? Help. He handed me a flash drive. I kept records. Screenshots. Messages. Contracts. Things even the court never saw. I didn't submit them back then because I was scared of dragging our name through more mud. But if he's going to lie again, then no more silence. I took the flash drive, but didn't thank him. He didn't expect me to. I'm sorry for what he did, he said. So am I. Then he walked away. I stared at the flash drive all afternoon before I plugged it into my laptop. It was a digital time bomb. Dozens of PDFs, emails Patrick had sent to loan officers using doctored documents. Fake shell companies registered in Alyssa's name without her knowledge. An entire scam structure I hadn't seen before. He hadn't just taken from me. He had used everyone as a tool. Even Alyssa was deeper in it than she realized. I called her that night. Told her everything. There was silence. Then she said, "He really never loved me, did he?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She knew. "I need to come home," she whispered. "You're always welcome. But I want to do more than just visit. I want to work with you. Full-time. Make Reclaim real. You already do. Not like this. I want to build it. Office space. Grants. Expansion. Make sure what he did to me, to you, to his own family, never happens to anyone else." I paused. Then smiled. Then let's do it. Because Patrick may have taken nearly everything. But what we were building now, he'd never touch that. Not again. We signed the lease on a Tuesday. It was a modest office space, wedged between a consignment clothing shop and a shuttered yoga studio. 2 rooms. 1 bathroom. No working AC. But the moment I stepped inside, I saw it, our future. Alyssa did too. She twirled in the middle of the floor, arms wide, hair pulled back into a practical bun that somehow made her look 5 years older and 10 years more determined. "This is it," she said. "This is where the ghosts go to die," I added. And it was. We called it the Reclaim Foundation. No frills. No corporate fluff. Just a name with purpose. We printed brochures. Filed for nonprofit status. Built a website that didn't look like it came out of 2004. Clara donated a refurbished printer. Delilah called in favors for furniture. Within weeks, we had our first 2 interns, college girls studying social work, hungry to help. And the first time a woman walked through our door holding a folder and a trembling hand, I knew. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was redemption. One afternoon, while sorting intake forms, Alyssa paused. "You know," she said, "I used to think forgiveness was the end of the story. And now? I think it's just a chapter." I looked up from the file cabinet. Which one? Not the first. Not the last. But maybe the one where the main character stops waiting to be rescued. I smiled. "And starts building her own rescue boat?" She laughed. "Exactly. That same week, we were featured in a local magazine. 2 generations reclaiming justice, 1 woman at a time. The article quoted me saying, "We're not here to punish the past. We're here to empower the present." Which sounded noble. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had punished the past. Every day I walked into that building, I stepped on the graves of what Patrick had buried. Trust. Safety. Stability. Family. And with every intake, every training session, every legal referral, we unearthed what he tried to keep buried. We turned his wreckage into our framework. One evening, a woman brought in a duffel bag. Not a folder. Not a phone. A full duffel. Inside were receipts, contracts, fake invoices, loan applications, and a journal. "My son-in-law is stealing from my daughter," she said. "She won't leave. She says it's all a misunderstanding. But I know the signs. I saw the story on you in the magazine." She paused. "I need you to help me save her before she ends up like I did. Before she wakes up with nothing." I looked at Alyssa. She nodded. "Let's begin," she said. And we did. That night, I sat alone in the back room with a cup of cold coffee and the glow of a desk lamp. On the bulletin board were notes. Names. Outcomes. Reclaimed stamps in red ink. But it wasn't just a list. It was a ledger. And for the first time since my life was stolen, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I was accounting. And the balance? It was tipping back in my favor. It came in a gold envelope with silver lettering. The State Women's Justice Council Annual Gala, honoring pioneers in victim advocacy. At first, I thought it was junk. But then I saw the names printed beneath the honorees section. Ashton M. and Alyssa R., founders of the Reclaim Foundation. I laughed so loud Clara nearly dropped her teacup. "You're going," she said. "No, you're going. I don't have a dress. We'll burn your old one and buy 2 new ones." The night of the gala, the hotel ballroom was a sea of sequins and champagne flutes. I hadn't worn heels since my husband's funeral, and they still felt like a betrayal to my ankles. Alyssa stood beside me in navy blue, all quiet grace and sharp confidence. She looked nothing like the girl who once said, "It was all cheap junk anyway." And I wasn't the woman who had to sleep in a motel room with nothing but betrayal and heartburn either. We sat at table 14. By the end of the night, there were 12 women seated with us. Every one of them a former client. Dana. Ellie. Clara's friend, now a board member. Even Delilah, who brought a +1 and passed out business cards like candy. The MC called us up after the second course. We walked to the podium, me slow, steady, Alyssa just behind. The applause was warm. But it wasn't the kind that comes from pity. It was respect. I spoke first. 365 days ago, I woke up in a hospital room on my birthday, alone and robbed of everything I owned, physically and emotionally. I thought that was the end of something. I looked around. But it wasn't. It was the start. Because what I didn't know then was that being emptied meant I could choose what I filled myself back up with. And I chose fire. Laughter. Then applause again. Alyssa took the mic next. I didn't just help destroy my mother's home, she said. I destroyed her trust. Her peace. I did it for a man who told me lies dressed up as ambition. And she had every right to walk away from me forever. She paused. But she didn't. Another pause. She didn't walk away. She handed me the tools and said, fix it. And because of her, because she didn't throw me away, I got to find out who I really am. That was the moment someone in the back stood up. Then another. And another. A standing ovation in heels and tuxedos and tear-streaked foundation. We didn't cry. We didn't need to. Because this moment wasn't about us. It was about the ones still sleeping in motels. Still staring at empty rooms. Still wondering if the people who stole their lives will ever answer for it. This moment said, they will. Because Ashton and Alyssa weren't just survivors anymore. They were proof that survival was only the beginning. The gala faded into memory like a good dream, sharp at the edges, warm at the core. But life didn't slow down. The foundation got busier. More women. More stories. More victories. And then, one rainy morning, I opened my hall closet to grab an umbrella and knocked over a box I'd nearly forgotten. It was the last thing I hadn't unpacked from the storage unit. I sat down on the rug and opened it. Inside were old birthday cards. Dozens. All addressed to me from Alyssa. From Harold. From friends I'd long lost to time or distance. One envelope had no return address. No stamp. Just a plain white card, slipped between two older ones. I opened it. Inside was a prison visitation slip. Stamped. And signed. And a note. You're not as clever as you think. Stories fade. Mine won't. Patrick. Still trying to claw his way into my life with nothing but paper and arrogance. I didn't flinch. I stood up. Walked to the fireplace. And burned the card. Let the smoke carry his pettiness out of my house, out of my lungs, out of me. That's the thing about predators like him. They think you'll never stop fearing the shadow they left. But the truth? He was just a man. And I was so much more. Later that week, the state attorney reached out. Patrick had violated his communication restrictions by attempting indirect contact with victims, specifically me. Another year added to his sentence. No parole hearing this time. And with that, the final thread was cut. For good. That Friday, Alyssa surprised me with something I didn't expect. She handed me a wrapped box, soft paper, crisp corners. It's not your birthday, I said. She smiled. No. But this is. I opened it. Inside was a framed certificate. Official, gold-stamped, embossed seal and all. State accreditation of domestic fraud and financial abuse advocacy. Issued to Ashton and Alyssa, Reclaim Foundation. You're a recognized advocate now, she said. Not just local. Statewide. You can train others. You can help write policy. You can help rebuild the system that failed you. I didn't speak for a long time. Just ran my hand over the raised lettering. You did this. I asked. We did this, she said. No, I said softly. You did this. That evening, I walked the house in silence. Ran my hand along the banister Harold built. Lit the fireplace with the reclaimed matches from my old drawer. Let the grandfather clock tick behind me like a war drum turned lullaby. Then I opened my notebook. The one I started on motel stationery, the night after I was robbed. Page 1 had only 4 words. She will answer later. 23 chapters later, I added the final words. She did. And it wasn't an ending. It was a statement. A declaration. A promise to anyone who ever felt erased. That silence is temporary. And one day, you'll be the one holding the pen. Spring arrived with soft winds and windows open. The house breathed easier now. Not just because the rooms were full again, but because I was too. Every morning, I'd wake early. Brew coffee. Sit by the front window in that same restored antique chair and watch the sun light up the porch where my welcome home, Matt, had once been stolen. I bought a new one last week. It reads, "Take off your lies at the door." Visitors always chuckle. They don't know the full story. Not unless I choose to tell them. And I only do if it helps. Because some stories are swords. And some become shields. Mine became both. Alyssa moved back in for a while, just until she found her footing. She took the guest room, painted it herself, even repurposed the old desk she once did homework on. Now it's covered in grant proposals and court referral forms. She laughs more these days. So do I. Every Friday we go to the local diner. Order the same thing, coffee, eggs, and one slice of pie to share. It's tradition now. One day, the waitress asked, "You two always seem like you've been through something." I smiled. "You have no idea," I said. The foundation expanded. We opened a second office in a neighboring county, then partnered with a legal aid clinic, then hired a full-time financial advisor to help our clients untangle the messes left behind by manipulators and thieves. Every woman who walks through our doors now gets a folder, a plan, and a promise. You're not crazy. You're not alone. You are not what they did to you. That's the mantra we painted above the reception desk. Some read it and cry. Some read it and nod. Some don't read it until weeks later, when they finally look up long enough to believe it. Patrick wrote again. This time, the letter went straight to the state's legal office. Filed. Ignored. Forgotten. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. He no longer lived in my world. Because this world? It belonged to me. To us. To every woman who ever found herself standing in the shell of a life and thought, this is the end. Only to learn it wasn't. It was the beginning. On my 70th birthday, the circle threw a party. Clara made lemon bars. Dana brought flowers. Ellie gave me a hand-drawn picture of the reclaim office with the words, "Thank you for giving me back myself." And Alyssa? She gave me a key. To the new office, she said. It was brass. Etched. Shiny. I held it in my palm and smiled. This time, I said, I'm not locking the door behind me.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe. Bye bye.